I recently bought two new For Against Darkness books and thought that I would bring them to you here with just a page through to show you what they are because I'm starting over. They're both for levels 1 plus, and I'm starting over with a new quadruplet of characters based to some extent on this in this book using there's a fairy class here, and I'm going to put together a kind of Fey-based group and run through the court of the Pixie King. But we're going to start with Ravengers of Ruins. This is rules for ruined cities, their monsters, and custom beast folk for levels 1 plus. And it is, here are the writing and illustration credits. Alexi is the fellow who does the Pocket Lands cards, which you've seen on my channel a bunch. And I noticed that there are, in line with this book, also some bestiary cards that I don't think have stats on the back, but are pictures, and then the monsters in here are those, so you could use his cards with these, and I was not aware of these cards, so these look pretty cool. In any event, we're talking here For Against Darkness, Ravengers of Ruins, and we will look to start out. Of course, we'll take a look here at the table of contents. We've got some custom classes, something called RPG spells, which I'll talk about I'll talk about all of this, some ruined city maps, a bunch of tables, of course, and then the meat of this book is the monster, what's called the monster gallery, and these are new monsters that you can bring in, I would imagine, really to any of your For Against Darkness sessions. So we have the note here, and this is, I think, common in For Against Darkness books, making reference not only to other books, but to things that aren't yet published, which has always been a little bit of a pet peeve of mine that they continue to do this. But in any case, it starts with a note that it references something that's not yet published. At least I don't think it's published, because I've tried to buy this one and I don't see it. We have some, by now standard, the scaling up rules to adjust the character level based on the level of your book, which is great. And we have customization, as with everything in 4AD. What you are the player, use only the rules you like. You're not cheating if you're having fun. So an important and obvious, but maybe important note to make. You can create your own beast folk class here, and it will give you some suggestions with a default profile of what that class would be, and a generalized list of what are known as major and minor traits. So the major trait list could be like an innate skill and its primary attack, and then minor traits list are things like it could be breathing underwater or have a hated foe, and a secondary attack or secondary weapons proficiency, and as well some restrictions that you put on it. And then it offers some sample beast folk, and one which I think, in thinking about sort of at least one of my kids, if I was running this in that regard, the cat folk is one I think that would be quite popular in my house. But all sorts of a mouse folk, mosquito folk, a sheep folk, spider folk. I like that concept. So the it begins with this generalized guide, and I think this is really great because I'm not yet sure what I'm going to put together, but I do like the idea of making my own character. We get to this section here on RPG spells. These are new spells allowed to any spellcasting character of any level, and they're intended for players who use 4AD as a multiplayer role-playing game under the guidance of a GM. They reveal secrets that will be hard to use in solo play and make sense only under, okay, blah, blah, blah. So there are a few spells here, and one is Dispel Illusion that will reveal the true nature of all beings in the area. There's an Omen, which will reveal the useful information about the greatest danger that the party is likely to encounter. And then there is something about mind reading, basically. So as promised, as stated here, these are really designed for non-solo play. If you are running this as a GM, as the basis of an RPG. We have ruined city maps, allowing you to generate maps and tables for ruined cities. and it explains that you can. It's a little, well, I guess it is a map, but it's not. These are not tiles. These are not a D66 table of tiles. So essentially, what you are asked to do is to drop a certain number of D6 for. They suggest 10 or 4 if you want 10d4 for fewer carders, to drop them on a table and then connect the rooms based on the die number, and you would be creating carders or rooms based on the number that you have. So each die itself is a room, and then the number that it represents is the number of carders running off it, which is why it says if you want fewer carders, you could just use a d4, so you wouldn't perhaps end up with something that needed to have 6 carders running off it. And it gives you an example here of something that was done, and then we start in with the tables. Now, here there's a special note. Once you leave the ruins, the adventure once you leave the ruins, the adventure is over. Normally, you can't return to a dungeon you left, but here you could decide to return anyway. You have to roll again for the random content in all the rooms. So basically, treating it as a map or a place you can return to. I think in my play, so we have specific treasure tables and minions and vermins, and then the weird monsters and bosses, and then these will come from the aforementioned listing here of people, of creatures. I think for my play, I would like to do something specifically more urban oriented or exterior or with structures and things. And I think I'm going to figure out a way to bring in much more detail than is offered here, and perhaps make some rules for interacting with that detail. Of course, this does provide the manner in which to do that. We have basically a rumor table, a special locations table, including things like a wizard's library and an abandoned shop and a wine center. We have what's the thing at the back of that room subtable. Use this subtable to decorate your city ruins. And so there is a D6 table here. I'm not sure, / I'm pretty sure it's not, that there are not rules within here to interact with all these things per se, but you could make that up on your own as you saw fit. There's an encounter table, a what did that building used to be table. And it specifically says here, this has no game effect, but may give you ideas. So you could perhaps allow a search mechanism or whatever to look around and get things. Maybe you could build in a timer for wandering monsters or danger to appear if you were spending time trying to do something. We have a magic rings table that presumably, with no reference here, I'm going to assume that this is referred to in the rules that you would find in the rest of the book with the monsters. What does that ring look like? And then we get to this listing of the monsters, and each one comes with an illustration. They're in alphabetical order, but I believe, based on what we have here, that it's a combination of minions, vermin, and the weird monsters and bosses in here. So, for example, the blood brood is under the minions and vermin, and this brain boiler is going to be one of the weird monsters or bosses. So we will take a look here. This is a level 4 vermin. It's treasure -2, and there could be d6 + 3 of this blood brood. Once wounded, the blood brood's targets keep on losing 1 more life on the monster's turn until a blessing is cast, or after combat, a bandage is applied. Multiple bites are not cumulative. That's pretty bad, because you could be in a scenario where you don't have either of those things. Characters who lose over half their maximum life to the blood brood must save versus level 6 curse. Clerics are going to add their level. Other religious classes add half a level. Or they will become minor vampires should they later die from any cause, and then it's referring you to 4 Against the Abyss. Any character they kill always becomes a minor vampire. Retainers and pets contaminated to become blood zombies instead. That's a level 3 undead minion, no treasure. Blood Dames and the Unliving are immune. Wizards and alchemists can grind them into ghost food. Ooh, that is worth 4d6 gold, and also referencing you to 4 against the Abyss. Their reaction is they always fight, so I think you'd have to try to flee, I guess, to get rid, to bypass that. And we'll look at our Brain Boiler here. I'm not going to go through everything in here. I'll just do the Brain Boiler and maybe one more. This is a boss. It's a level 5 boss. It has 5 life, a morale +1. It does 3 attacks and a treasure +1. Each attack is going to drain 1 spell. Oh, that stinks. From the target's memory. And drain spells count as spent. It always attacks targets in this order, and then it's giving the listing of the order. And it's making a lot of reference here to some specifics, which I'm going to skip over. I guess they either come from here or other sections, so I'm not sure about this one. While their goals converge with the Inquisitions, the latter abhor all non-humans and ironically fight all boilers they find. So I don't actually know how this plays in, if it plays into the information in here or elsewhere, but that's a little confusing to me. So I will skip over that. Let's go to the, that's cool, the Clockman. That's a weird monster. It's an automaton, level 5. 4 life, 2 attacks, never checks morale. That makes sense. Its treasure is D6 tech bits, worth 20 gold points or 1 gadget point. Oh, that's good. I have Wayfarers and Adventurers, and I use the gadget points with my gnome. It's immune to sleep, mind spells, and poison. Its powered blades ignore shields. We roll a d4 at the end of each of the Clockman's turns. If the roll is under the turn's number, it explodes. When the Clockman explodes, every party member who fails to save versus level 5 Dragon Breath, rogues and fire elves add their plus level, suffers d6 wounds. Each wound point can be substituted by sacrificing instead an item carried, not coins or items without a gold cost. That's interesting. So it has a reaction of inactive or peaceful or fight to the death. So I think these entries here just kind of demonstrate one of the things that I think is so great about this system, aside from its almost intuitive baseline mechanic, at least intuitive if you have any experience role-playing, is that the monsters are so well developed, and the things that they do are thematic, and there's just enough variance that it's easy to allow yourself to kind of get involved in playing this out, theater of the mind, in terms of what might be going on. And I think the attention to developing such a range of characters is really the heart of that, combined with the simplicity of the mechanics, is the heart of what makes this so great, and I think what makes it live on. It's not just the new books. I mean, there are other types of these light RPG systems, one of which I've done on my channel even, that I won't mention specifically by name, where there's tons of books, but there's not depth of content. And here we are having both, and that's just great. So last one, we'll look at this little gobble fling guy. He's a pretty funny looking guy. And we have some flavor text here of goblins and halflings born. They are quick, deceitful kleptomaniacs. There's d6 plus 2 of them. They're a level 3 minion. They have treasure -1, 2 and 6 odds of surprise. And we're going to roll a d3 once before combat to see the special abilities of the gang that you encounter. So either at the start of their 3rd turn, all surviving ones flee and raise the alarm. And then the next minions you meet are going to be at the maximum number. That's interesting. I like that carries forward. Or their taunts are insufferable. They will attack first, and any enemy can only slay a single one per round, except if you have a spell. Or each successful hit by a gobble fling causes no wound, but instead the git runs away with a random item from its target, not armor. So it's going to steal something from you. And they do have the reaction table here. So, and that reaction is pickpocket, number 3 above. So that's a cute little guy, and could be very pesky. And the rest of the book is comprised of these enemies. All of them are different as stated. And then we finish up here with an advertisement that I don't mind showing you again, because I love these Pocket Lands Geomorph cards. You see them on my channel a bunch, as well as cards that go with the illustrated monsters that are in here. And then I guess there's some dungeon floor plans as well, combined with those. So that is a look inside this fully illustrated bestiary of 34 new monsters dwelling in ruined cities for parties of level 1 or higher. And as mentioned, rules for creating your own classes for animal folk characters, such as cat folk, sheep folk, mosquito folk, rules to generate maps and content, tables for special features, treasure, and magic rings, and new spells to be used in Game Master games under the RPG Lite option. As mentioned, it requires 4 against darkness, and if you're going to do the beast folk classes, you need 4 against the abyss. So that is a look inside Ravengers of Ruins, which I plan to be using very soon. And the other book I picked up is Court of the Pixie King. We can see the credits for this here. This is Enchanted Meadows for 4 against darkness, for also levels 1+. And the back of the book says, Enchanted Meadows await. Enter the realm of the fairies, both bright, beautiful, and dark and foreboding. A battle for the rule of all Fatum is fought. Now, it includes fairy lore, fae, and gnome expert skills. I kind of got it for that because I play a gnome a lot in this game. There's new reactions. There's 2 new dungeon tile sets, 2 new classes, fairy and bog fly, new monster spells and magic items, toadstool rings and tree hollows, enchanted mushrooms, new gnome gadgets, traits, milestones, mutations, 6 new druid spells, and a new patron. This one, I think what's interesting about it actually is the difference in the artwork on the front and the back is pretty significant, because that's kind of not super friendly, and then this kind of gives a very friendly air to it. So I won't go through the contents in detail, but if you want to see it, I suppose you can pause the video here to take a look, and there's the whole thing for you. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we dare not go a-hunting for fear of little men. And it is talking about the need here in this realm for heroes, because there has been sudden sickness and disease and the rise of the unseelie court. And I guess that would be the back here threatening the front. And there we have the theme of this book. 4 against darkness core book is required to play. There are 3 ways to play this book, according to the book. We can play without using the provided acts for a traditional 4 against darkness game. I don't really know what acts means. I think there's like an adventure here going through. We could randomly roll or choose one of the adventure acts included, or we could play all 6 consecutively as a campaign and then play the final scenario, Pixie Apocalypse. And it says if we're playing it as a campaign, of course, don't read them out of sequence. It suggests other books you could possibly use with it. Again, mentioning the HCL formula, which allows any level of party to play this adventure by modifying the stats. It says that some you could play with any classes, but some gain minor bonuses like fairy, bog fly, loot, and pixie sprites and gnomes. I don't know, where do this pixie and the sprite classes come? I'd like to know what book that comes from. If anyone knows, put that in the comments for me. Some monsters can fly in the book, and it explains what the implication of that is. There are, as always, or as often in these books, there are some new rules. So in this book, the conceit is that there's above and below, and you can be encountering a monster in the world of above or the world of below, and that depending on which domain you're in, some of the monster stats could change. So that's a nice thematic addition to this, and we'll see this play out in the tiles as we get into it. There's fairy magic. The fae are naturally attuned to magic and have a natural resistance to it, and explains the implication of that. And it also, there's an escape mechanic, because the Enchanted Meadows are so captivating that it's difficult to leave them. So each time your party attempts to exit, there's a 3 in 6 chance that they become confused and lost, and then you're rolling a d6 + 1, and then that result is the amount of areas that you are actually in. So you have to go back that amount, and you have to repeat that every time you exit. Mischief is a new reaction, and it says roll on the mischief table and follow the instructions, but of course the table's not right there, so we'll have to find that, I suppose. Burrow Hole, there are some new features here, and the Burrow Hole is the portal between the Enchanted Meadow and the Dark Realm. So there's you have to be able to move to that to move back and forth. You can discover tree hollows. These are large hollowed out trees that are homes to many of the inhabitants. If you roll one of those, they are mini dungeons within themselves, and it explains the rules for that. Toadstool rings are mushroom rings are a key source of fairy magic, and you either need to avoid it or investigate it. And then if you do investigate it, you can roll on the toadstool ring table. So what this, and there's also enchanted pools with an enchanted pool table. So what this book is allowing for is a little more interaction with the environment in terms of different tables that are optional, let's say, and you can choose or not to roll on them. I'm not going to go through so much the actual story so as not to ruin this or present too many spoilers for it, but you can see there are 6 acts to this story, and if you wanted to play any of them as indicated, you could play through as a campaign, which I will probably do with the party I'm creating, or you could do it randomly, or just use these tables here in a regular game. And again, more of the story here, endings to the story, and then we get into the various tables here. We have a general Pixie content table that is going to tell you whether you find a Carter or a special feature or vermin. This type of table, very familiar to players of this game. And here's where we get into a little bit of the differences, where we have 2 sets of tiles. So this is the Enchanted Meadow entrance rooms above, and there are the D66 table to roll on, telling us that tiles 11, 23, 52, and 63 contain those Burrow Hole icons, and that will indicate you can get to the lower realms. Well, sorry, I ran out of memory there. I have finally purchased an actual video camera for the channel. It's taken me, I've got over 300 videos on the channel and have not been using an actual video camera to make them, so this will be the last video made from my phone. In any case, these are the above entrance room tiles here, and then if you get to a spot, you can choose to go below, and then you'll have the below entrance, the below tiles, which we'll get to. We have a special feature table, and again, I'm not going to go through too much of this in detail because part of the fun of this game is just discovering it on your own, but we already mentioned the Enchanted Pool. So it says if you choose to investigate the pool, you can select a character and roll on the Enchanted Pool table, and you can also avoid the pool and move on. So each pool may be only activated the first time you visit it. So you would need to track this a little bit. And the Pixie King special event table, and here we get to the Dark Realm entrance rooms below. There's entrance rooms, and then there is the D66 table of the Dark Realm, and we have additionally corridors and realms as well. And here they are. And we have a treasure table, a magic treasure table, epic treasure, treasure complications. Again, very familiar format to those of you who have played this game before. I think this would pair very nicely, by the way, with just the base game. And I think I was talking in a different video about using this as an RPG for kids, and I think that could really work if you wanted to do that with just 2 books. I suspect this one and that one, you know, it's going to be a little dark at times. I don't know how dark, so you have to judge your audience, but we do have a bloody axe there, but you have to judge the audience, of course. But in any case, I think this would pair nicely just with the first book if you're looking to do something in this kind of realm, either for kids or just if you're just getting into 4 Against Darkness and you don't have a ton of other materials. We have the vermin table. We have a minion table. We'll just take a look at, so we've got some belligerent brownies and some red caps, grim ones, gremlins, finfolk, and bog flies. Again, the main entities here, the main enemies here may not be so revolutionary, but the differentiation among the behavior of the enemies has always been something in For Against Darkness that I appreciate, and no doubt continues here. We have weird monsters. There's that Enchanted Pool table. I'm not going to really look too closely at that because I want to be surprised. A mischief table for the reaction. This is the monster reaction. They're unsurprisingly, perhaps, or thematically, certainly, they're going to take your stuff or do some magic on you. That toadstool ring table, enchanted mushroom table. We have a Pixie King quest table that could possibly be assigning you quests if you choose true traps. We have wandering monsters. Again, pretty much what you would expect, but just giving you the overview here. It looks like a lot of content. There are the secrets here. There's a search table, scroll table, a wand table. Perhaps there's things that you could find. And there are patron rules. I don't have greedy gifts of the Guildmaster, so I don't play with patrons, so I don't know those rules, but there is a new patron here with some special rules and giving you quests. I should probably look into that one. Looks like it adds something kind of cool, so additional things that you can do. And for those of us that like to play gnomes in this game, we have some new gnome gadgets here. So these are, well, this says you must have the Pixie King as their patron. I don't know. I don't know if I know their patron rules, so I'm not going to worry about that. But I do play gnomes, and I know what gnome gadgets are. So we could make, for example, a wind-up frog, which will attempt to intercept D3 incoming arrows and make some defense rolls on your behalf. We can make a compass that would help with perhaps getting lost, trap recovery, a listening device that would allow your gnome to re-roll room contents once per adventure. Has to be a closed door. A fire extinguisher will put out any non-magical fire. A gluey ball. Throwing this ball of glue allows the party to withdraw from combat. I like that. Roll d6. On a 1, they withdraw, adding no bonus to their defense rolls, but on a 2 to 6, they get a +3 to their defense rolls as they withdraw. That's pretty good. A flash bomb, spectacles of wisdom, and a bouncy ball. That's thrown down a corridor at minor skeletal monsters, maybe like bowling, skeletal bowling. And it makes an attack roll versus the skeleton's level. If it hits, the skeleton is killed, and the character immediately makes an additional attack, so can keep doing that. Minty breath spray. When sprayed into the character's mouth, it provides a one-time +1 wooing bonus. That is for, I can't think of the book, but I have it. I use it for the alchemy, but not for the wooing. We have a respirator, trap goggles, and we have some new gnome expert skills, which will allow him to spend less time tinkering, or additionally, well, this is good. So there's an illusion spell in Wayfarers and Adventurers that the gnome can have access to, which I have this book. But this blueprint will allow him to learn any other spell with the name illusion in it. So that's pretty good. And if you become a gadget master, you get a +1 bonus to use a gadget where a save is required. We have some Fae expert skills. This is for bog flies, fairies, lutins, pixies, and sprites. We have Fairy Circle. With this skill, 3 Fae creatures sit, forming a fairy circle. They all regain 1 used spell slot. It is only required that one of the 3 Fae have the skill for it to work. It only works outdoors, etc. Mushroom Magic. A Fae with this skill can re-roll a result on any mushroom table in any book once per encounter. Fairy Dreams. Once per adventure, the fairy cause another party member to take a quick nap and dream. There's no need for a wandering monster's roll. At the end of the dreams, the awakened character receives 1 madness point and D3 -1 clues. And then we have the new classes. And the fairy class here is They are the most magically attuned of all the Fae. They have some ability to resist magic and the natural elements. Due to their small size, heightened senses, and agility, they are difficult to hit. However, they have a -2 on melee attack rolls. They add plus level to defense, but only when not glowing, and they will emit a glowing light at will, which can illuminate a dungeon room. If they're not glowing, they have a defense bonus of +1 and none when glowing. They have 2 spell lists, the fairy spells from the Pixie King scroll table that we'll see later on, as well as the basic spells from the 4AD core book. They can cast L+1, and they don't need spell books or have to memorize anything. They add +L to spellcasting rolls like wizards and half a level when casting from scrolls or magic items. They can fly with a +2 defense, and they can shrink magic items such as jewelry, articles of clothing, and wands to fit themselves. They can't carry normal size weapons, armors, or shields, and they can only carry up to 20 gold. They save as wizards, and they get a +2 when saving versus magic, the elements, magic items, and magical traps. +2 to stealth saves, except if they're glowing, they get a -2 to stealth rolls. I guess you decide if they're glowing or not, so I don't see glow rules in particular beyond that. Their strength saves are rolled at a -3, and they can't bash doors. That makes sense. No armor, no weapons, no starting equipment, D6 gold. Life 2 + L, and they have the wizard's expert skills. The other class is the Bog Fly. These are 3 feet tall. They're the largest of the Fae, dark green, gray, and skin tone, and they are drawn to anything that glitters, such as jewelry or gems, etc. They can have an innate ability to teleport up to 10 feet away. So they have small wings, but they can't really fly. They excel at the use of slings and usually try to avoid close combat. They only add half a level to that ranged roll, however, and they have no bonus to defense rolls. They can cast 1 spell per adventure, chosen at the moment of casting. They can teleport 2 times L times per adventure at a total distance of 10 feet, even through solid rock or to the other side of a door. On any failed defense versus melee, they can use one of its teleports to evade the attack, but not against traps or spells. And it says by holding onto another character for a total cost of 2 teleport uses, they can attempt to teleport itself and the other character. However, there's a 2 in 6 chance that only you will teleport. You get to increase by 10% any treasure in gold and gems that you are found with a Bog Fly in the party. Can't carry heavy items. They save as rogues, but cannot pick locks or disarm traps. They add plus level to stealth and -2 to strength. They have light armor, light weapons, the sling. 2d6 gold to start. 3 + L life. And they have expert rogue skills except lockpicking and trap skills. So I'm not sure. I mean, I guess they're flying. I don't know. I'm not sure what would be the incentive to play this Bog Fly. The ranged character, I suppose, but they're not getting a super big benefit for that. So I'm not sure what the clear benefit of playing that character would be. So now we have a listing of some milestones and some character traits. There's this note here. Many of the items listed below require other 4 Against Darkness books to use. I don't love it when I see something like that. And this game set does tend to do that. And on the one hand, I understand why, but on the other hand, I think it is a little frustrating as the player to run into something like that. There are some new character traits here, new milestones and character traits. For example, big score. Character may spend 5 clues after each adventure for a roll on the treasure table from that adventure book. You can get a random mutation from this list here, which is part of the Chaos Line character. I don't know if that Chaos goes with some other book. I don't have that rule that I know of. It says the mutations are beneficial but come at a cost. So for example, you could have a two-face mutation, you gain a second face, allowing the character to act first, even if surprised, or spider fingers. The character's fingers grow longer, gaining extra joints that gains a +1 to disarming traps. There's expert mutations. These are for expert level characters who already have mutations. And for example, Chomp Chomp. Characters with grinning chompers may make one extra out-of-sequence attack each encounter with no attack bonus of any kind. So that's clearly an advanced skill here. Whisper in the dark. For characters with a purple tentacle, the tentacle will whisper terrible things. All enemies make morale rolls at an additional -1. That's pretty cool. Pretty devious there. We have arcane mutants. The following spells may only be learned, inscribed, and used by spellcasters that have obtained at least 2 mutations. So we have Dark Grace. This spell may be cast as a free action when one or more party members are required to save against an effect triggered by a foe. The caster must perform a spellcasting roll with +L versus the target's level. If successful, all party members count as having saved. Well, that's pretty cool, but if you fail, you automatically count as having failed your save twice. So all party members then must save as normal. Warp the Weave. The caster may remove one spell effect or magical effect from a non-hostile target with no spellcasting roll. This does not include removing paralysis and other curses. Inversion. The caster may change the elemental type, fire, frost, lightning, water, etc., of any spell or magically affected item for the duration of one encounter. So that's pretty cool. So for example, if you have a flaming sword that inflicts fire-based damage, you can turn it into a sword that inflicts frost-based damage, for example. Draconic Inhalation. You may perform a spellcasting roll with +L versus a dragon's level. If successful, the time between breath weapon attacks is increased by 3 turns. Well, those are pretty cool. We have, there's the spell table list, so if you're getting a random spell that you're actually rolling on that table. A Fey Whimsy table. Roll on this table when another rule calls for it. Note that the results go beyond 20 because 5 to 7 will modify further rolls. So, for example, this kind of reminds me of the troll. If you play, I think it's, I don't know which book it's in. I'll put up a note on that. If you play with the troll character, which I often do, to determine what the troll is going to do, you have to roll a d20, and you get a behavior. And here this looks a little bit similar. So if you encounter this, the Fae are whimsy. So who knows what's going to happen? And maybe they forgot how to fight, or they're idle. So here, if you roll on idle, the Fae just sits on the ground doing nothing and defends at a -2 during this encounter. It will not attack. If the party flees, it will also flee. Or I'm feeling funny today. The Fae fights as normal this time, but his next roll on this table is at a +1. This modifier is cumulative, so if you roll again, it becomes a +2, etc., and then it resets at the end of the adventure. Dance till you drop. The Fae starts to dance graciously and will do so until the end of the encounter. Its defense rolls are at a +1 while this dance lasts, but they won't attack. So that's a more randomness on randomness. Trip. The Fae trips a random friend who automatically loses his or her balance and must spend his next action to stand up. Grab and run. The Fae fights normally, but as soon as one enemy is defeated, if that enemy has any treasure, it's going to grab it and run. The other characters must fight the Fae and kill him, subdue him, or put him to sleep, or the Fae will run away with the treasure, never to be seen again. And there is a pixie dust table here. It says roll on this table every time a dose of pixie dust is used upon a foe to determine its effects. So it could possibly do a sleep effect or laughter. The user immediately performs a spellcasting roll with +L to affect the target, which could be a group of minor foes or one single major foe. If the foe is a witch, demon, or hag, the foe's level increases by 1. On all other targets, it decreases by 2 to a minimum of 1 when the foe is attacking, and by 1 to a minimum of 1 when the party is attacking. animals and artificial creatures are not affected. So you can see here there's a lot of little things sprinkled in that will add some depth and changed behaviors for your travels here and for your characters. We have new Druid spells. I often play Druids. Spells listed as outdoors, only work in forest dungeons or other open terrain. And it says some of these are not exclusive to Druids, but may be learned also by wizards and elves. And they're described here. There's a D6 table for that, and we'll just take a look at a couple of them. The Thorny weapon. Thorns sprout out of the end of the Druid's staff or cudgel, adding +1 to the character's attack, the melee rolls. And you can cast it on any wooden weapon. That's pretty cool. And then the thorns will fall off at the end of the encounter. Animal tongue. After casting the spell, the Druid may converse with any animal. It lets the Druid re-roll the animal's reactions. And regrowth. The spell will cause the regrowth of a missing limb. A missing head or limb that has been missing for longer than an adventure will not grow back. The character must be alive when the spell is cast. If the event that cut the limb is also caused by a specific loss of life, for example, losing 2 life and a leg because of a trap, you also heal that life. And then blind sight. The Druid may cast the spell as a free action, either on himself or any party member. For the duration of an encounter, the character will not suffer any attack or defense penalties for being blind or being in the dark. So there's a look inside the Court of the Pixie King, along with Ravengers of Ruins, 2 of my most recent 4 Against Darkness purchases. I've been playing a lot of this game recently. I took it with me on vacation because I love more Mountainous Mayhem. That's an excellent also outdoors one. This is for levels 4+. I took it with me chiefly because it's something, not that it was so small, because I have all this and then my 3-ring binder, which is my basic rules and some other stuff I've collected, but because I could just pack it up, you know, when I was done playing it and not like leave it out in the house we were staying in for everyone else to have to deal with. Just showing you my little collection here. I think I showed this at the beginning of the video as well. The system is basic, but allows for a lot of detail within the basic rubric, within the basic structure, and it I just, like with so many other people, enjoy this a lot. And if people want to see any more 4 Against Darkness on this channel, let me know. I haven't done any. I'm not sure that doing a playthrough of it is that particularly interesting, but perhaps a video on how I actually put things together might be of note. I don't know. In any case, that's a look at Ravengers of Ruins and Court of the Pixie King, which, along with some of these other ones, chiefly these 2, I think, and the Wayfarers and Adventurers, are going to form the next bit of playtime I give this game.